Hey everyone, we're live, pal. Andrew, 3 weeks in a row without missing a show. That's pretty good for us in 2024. How are you doing?
That's remarkable.
Three in a row,
It's
man.
remarkable. Listen, the stars have lined up. We're both. I don't think people realize how busy your day gig is and how busy my day gig is. And generally Tuesdays we're fine to do it, except for when we're not. But we're here. We're doing it.
Yeah, this is good. And hopefully soon, I think people know the gig now. We had Brian Alvarez come on and do a Q&A. We had Vicious Vince, a.k.a. Vinny V, come on and do a Q&A. And we're going to try and get Big Dave Meltzer in the upcoming weeks. So keep your eye on that one. So that will mean whether that means it's going to be a Tuesday or not, that is to be determined. But that is next on our list for Q&As. We had a big weekend, man. We had a giant pay-per-view that I thought hit home run, grand slam, a hole in one, whatever your sports metaphor is. I thought
I
that
thought you were
was an
naming.
amazing
I thought you
show.
were naming future AEW pay-per-view names. I thought that's what you just did.
Dynasty. I was thinking of what other 1970s and 80s soap opera like shows Tony Khan can start using.
Dallas, AEW
Right?
Dallas, AEW Knots Landing,
There you go. That'd be a
AEW
good one.
General Hospital.
By the way, before we even talk about the Sting thing, because man, what a tremendous piece of business
Yeah.
that was. What do you know about this Dynasty show?
I know a lot.
Okay, let me rephrase. What can you say about this Dynasty show, if anything?
It's in St. Louis, right?
Yeah, yes, it is in St. Louis.
Um, that was not the original location.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I
That
was
was not
wondering
the
about.
original
I was
location.
definitely wondering about that because St. Louis is great. There's a pro wrestling history. There's a reason to go to St. Louis, but I was thinking maybe a little bigger for the first time. But I guess St. Louis is fine as long as they think they can draw there.
Yeah. I would say I would have been very excited about the city that they had picked, not because I have any kind of connection to that city, right? It's not New York, it's
Mm-hmm.
not Jersey, it's not, anywhere here. But I thought it was I thought it was clever, the city.
Interesting.
That it was clever what they were doing. But I listen, another pay-per-view, right? Day after 420, 421. Um, I cannot say a word. I have been sworn.
So
I
based
would
off
order it.
of
I mean, listen, I would suggest ordering the pay-per-view.
yeah, it'll be up to snuff for AEW
Yeah,
fans.
absolutely.
I think adding another pay-per-view is probably smart because at least from a business perspective, their pay-per-view business, whether or not you feel ratings are flat or down or whatever, and we've gone ad nauseum on this website about what that stuff actually means. They win the night, they win the night. That's kind of what they're looking
Yeah.
for. The pay-per-view business is still something that I think they can continue to maximize, and we have to find what the perfect number is. But another pay-per-view in 6 weeks, I think, is probably good business, especially if this pay-per-view that they just did, Revolution, is gonna be one of the top earners in the lifespan of AEW, which it seems like it may be. I guess we'll have to wait and see what the deal is with the people who couldn't order it on BR for whatever reason on that day of. But it just felt like a pretty big deal. And you and I were in Chicago in 2021 for All Out, which I consider the greatest live wrestling event I've been to.
Yeah.
And this pay-per-view, I would have to rewatch the All Out show on pay-per-view again to kind of compare it. But this is probably my favorite pay-per-view that I've actually ordered and watched of all of the AEW shows. I've been to a lot of the other ones that I'm sure other people would pick, but man, this hit all the right things for me in what I enjoy about pro wrestling.
Oh, dude, it was I saw so many people say this was the best pay-per-view they had ever seen. This is the best AEW pay-per-view. I felt that it was probably one of the best that they've done. I don't know. I mean, listen, it could I still think All In was the best because it was such a monumental moment for them in the
You're talking
trajectory
about
of the
Wembley.
company. No, I'm sorry, All Out. I'm talking about All Out.
Yes,
Sorry.
the one that we went to.
All Out
Yes.
20. Yeah, the one that we went to. I still stand by, but I was there, so I got a very different feel of it. And a lot has changed in wrestling in the last 3 years. So
Mhm.
I don't know if I would feel the same way, if it was today. However, this show, top to bottom, great. Top to bottom, I had no issues with it. What would you say was the worst match? And again, I'm not criticizing the talent, but what would you say? It was maybe that scramble, right, on the main card?
I didn't watch the pre-show. And I'm kind of glad because that was just about the perfect 4-hour show. If I would have watched the pre-show, maybe I would have felt a little bit different. But I would go with the scramble over the women's match as the worst match. I thought the scramble for like all of but maybe the last few minutes of it was like a giant mess.
Yeah, it
Like
was
just
whatever.
missed
Yeah.
stuff and you know, you have guys that don't really make sense of being in the ring with each other, which is why the Meat Madness idea would have been cool because you kind of know what you're going to get. I think Dante Martin and Jericho were probably in that match to kind of stitch it together and keep it together, but I don't even think they did that great of a job of doing that.
Yeah.
But I also know people who like that match. I was not one of
Listen,
them.
and Jericho had a difficult time with Landis Jr. also, the week before. So
That was a rough match that also a lot of people seem to like, and I watched it and I didn't get it. I didn't
I thought
understand
it
what they
was
were
way
trying to
rougher
do.
than it should have been.
Yeah.
It was unnecessarily rough, and I think maybe the style difference and the language difference maybe played a part in this. I don't know because there was no reason. Both of them are fantastic wrestlers. There was no reason for it to go that way. I would say though, if I'm gonna say, I would say this is probably could be their best pay-per-view they've ever done.
Yeah.
I'll probably take that. Listen, the other thing is, it's 5 hours. The show ended late.
Yes.
I, you know what when I'm in that scrum, you know what I'm going to ask Tony? Why do pay-per-views have to go to midnight? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Why do they have to go 5 hours or whatever it is? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, it ended at 12. So 4 hours. Why do we have to go to midnight though?
So you either want him to start earlier or cut out a
7
match.
to 11, 7 to 11:15. That's where I want to go. Remember the pandemic when WWE was ending pay-per-views at like 10:40?
Yeah, 2 hours and 30-minute shows.
Yeah. They were just like sometimes it was like 10:15. You're like, we're wrapping up. It was great.
I will say we're spoiled on the West Coast because this show started at 5, was done at 9. I wasn't tired. If I was on the East Coast, I would have been really tired, especially on a
Yeah.
Sunday. So I give you guys a lot of credit. You diehards on the East Coast, knowing you got to go to work the next day, and being able to stay up, and some people are even doing content after that is done. So when I do it, I'm like, it's fine. I'm here. It's not that late. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
You
Andrew
know
should
what?
move
I
to the
love
West
watching
Coast.
wrestling I almost did. I almost moved to Calabasas about 10 years ago.
So
Almost did it.
Dave and Brian's gig is trying to get everyone to move to Hawaii
What do
because
we like the Von
it's like,
Erichs?
well, it's 3 hours earlier than the West Coast in Hawaii, so you're done with everything, and you still can go out to eat dinner.
Oh man. I would be convinced of doing that, to be honest. I'll never to wear shoes again. Like Kevin?
I would
I'm
I
into
would
it.
do it. I
I'm
would do
barefoot
it
all the time already.
if I could get my kids to come out there. I would definitely do it
Yeah.
because it's just like sports, right? Is you have your basketball game starts at 7:30 on the west or 7 on the West Coast. It starts at like 4 in Hawaii, and you're done before for the night's over. I would be really
Yeah.
into that. So Look, can we talk about Sting here? Because
Let's do it.
I would say by Friday, I was pretty excited for this Sting thing. Now, there was a conversation happening all throughout social media and in discords and such about what should happen during this match. Should the Young Bucks win or should Sting and Darby win? And I was a megaphone saying, Sting needs to win this match. He sold out the house. The people bought tickets to see him. And, there were some detractors to that statement. I did a poll on Twitter, and thank you to Sean Ross Sapp for retweeting it and amplifying it because we got, I don't know, 20 some odd hundred responses. And there was still about 38% of people who thought the Young Bucks should win the match. I was like,
Now, is
that
that
is so
because they're
interesting.
following? Is that because of the tradition that you put over on your way out? Is that why, or do they really want to see the Young Bucks win the titles?
They think that this is how you're supposed to do it, that this is the rule of wrestling, is when you leave, you're supposed to lose and put over the guys who are there and staying. Now, I get it,
Okay.
but if it weren't for the Montreal screw job, how many people would still think that way?
I don't know.
The time-honored tradition
the
that
time
Vince is
honored
talking
tradition.
about?
Listen, I think you can make up your own rules. It doesn't matter really. If at the end of the day, what is you're catering to your audience, not to some make believe story.
Yeah, they're the unwritten rule of professional wrestling. And to some extent, I think that's right? Like if you are, let me think about this. Let's go back to WrestleMania 39. Steve Austin and Kevin Owens. I'm sure there were a small amount of people who thought Kevin Owens, wow, if Kevin Owens can beat Steve Austin here, he's
Yeah.
an immediate top guy, or however you
Is
want
he?
to say
But would
that.
he be?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, he's already up there, right? He's already great. But in Dallas, the people want to see Stone Cold win that match. Me sitting at home on television, I was desperate for Austin to win that match because he's the guy, he's the old hero who has come back, and you don't want to see the old hero go out on a sword. That's sad. That's not fun. No matter if it helps the other guy, you still have to tell a story, and the story on WrestleMania 39 weekend was Austin's going to win, and
Yeah.
everybody was ecstatic, and it actually helped. It kind of gave WWE a little bit of a kick in the pants because some people came back to WWE for that match. Now let's fast forward to now. It's kind of the same thing. Like Sting sells out the house. The whole, and this is where I can be hard on Tony Khan's booking a lot because it's just not necessarily always my style. But what a tremendous job Tony Khan and AEW did with this, especially in the last week. I'd say, last 2 weeks. The Flair thing was kind of weird when he went to the Young Bucks locker room, and that whole thing was kind of thrown on at us at the end. But the presentation, the countdown, I know not a lot of people watch the countdown, but I specifically watched the countdown because I wanted to see the Sting stuff.
Yeah.
The way that they sold the whole show around him, the stuff with his kids, it was like top notch. It was everything about wrestling that I love, like just encapsulated into one match and one segment to end a pay-per-view. So shout out to everybody involved because I thought it was near perfect. And so going back to what I was saying is, I still find it hard to believe that people really wanted him to lose that match, or at least thought he should have lost that match, because had he lost that match, we don't get that great moment, which I'm going to remember for a very long time.
Yeah, I what a great send off, right? He got to do it the way he did. One thing about AEW, and if there was anything WWE can learn from them, which WWE does great in so many things, and quite possibly now with the the way that company has changed, it'll be different. but they respect the veterans. They don't look like fools at the end of the day. In WWE, you don't even have to be gone for too long. You could still be a guy that's in shape and that could go, but the moment they determine that you're old, you're done. And they embarrass you, and you're doing the tutti frutti in the back, and you're dancing, and you're in a poker skit, and you're looking like an idiot. They do this regularly, and you know what? They didn't do that in AEW with Sting. They didn't do that with Rob Van Dam. They haven't done that with Christian. They haven't done that with Edge. They don't make their legends look like fools. Because at the end of the day, guess what you're buying? You're buying the name, not the actual competition. That's what you're investing in, is the name. You're not investing in the best talent, to have, the best fights. You gotta use it in that capacity. To be honest, they haven't done that to Hogan, but Hogan did it to himself in the end. WWE protected him till the end. I thought the way that AEW handled Sting was as close to perfect. Could he have had a couple more singles matches? I would have loved to see it. Could he have challenged for a world title? I would have loved to see it. But they really want to keep him undefeated. They did. They realized his limitations. So did Sting. And he did tag matches his entire run there. Practically. He did have a singles, didn't he? Did he have at least one singles?
Good question. I don't remember. I would assume so, but maybe not. The other thing about this, though, the way that they did this, they have a roster of younger folks and older folks, and the older folks are kind of, some of those older folks are near the end. Like, think of like an Edge and a Christian. What they did with this Sting thing is they built an event based off of giving the fans what they wanted to see, and it worked. And I'm assuming Edge is going to turn heel, and he and Christian are going to do a tag thing, and then at some point, Edge is going to turn back on Christian and be a babyface again. And when that happens, then you could do the same thing for Edge. You build an event.
And guess what? You got 2 years out of it, right? You can have them do their tag run done the right way. They beat the Bucks. They win the title. Somebody else comes, takes. They could do it all over again. And maybe that should be the answer. In hindsight now, looking at this Edge run or Adam Copeland, it's so, I hate that name.
Adam Copeland?
I hate it.
Yeah, because we knew him for almost 30 years as Edge. But you're right, and there are others who are in this company who, if you want to do something, Dustin Rhodes being one of them, right? Now, Dustin isn't the same size of a star, but he was in the second main event on their very first show against his brother, and you could do something very easily with him where he's about to retire and he wants one last shot, and whoever the champion is like, buddy, we got some rankings here. You better get in line. And he wins a couple matches to get a TV, a TV championship opportunity to win a title in his last match.
By the way,
could do stuff like that.
I know his real name is Adam Copeland. Okay,
yes,
I know that.
Yes,
people are like, his name is Adam Copeland. I know that. I can't get past not calling him Edge. The mental block.
It's impossible. I don't know how the announcers do it. I commend them for it. People are still calling Bryan Danielson Daniel Bryan. Yeah. So it's hard. They've put these names in our minds.
I know the Vinceisms are stuck.
So I just think that they've created a blueprint on something that works for the fan base and for how this fan base enjoys wrestling, and B, for the gates, because when they're struggling selling their TVs, but they did bonkers for this show on the house, and then it looks like they're going to do really well on pay-per-view. So home run, again, using the sports metaphor, home run event for AEW. And now, what's the fallout here? What do we got coming? We have big business coming in a week and a half, so they'll have some stuff. They have Will Ospreay, who I think people are looking at as like, oh, he's got to be the top guy. Like now, the top baby face. Like, look at this guy. And it's a great problem to have. They have to figure out Swerve and Hangman and Samoa Joe and where they're going there. And it looks like Hangman's going to be out for a little while I believe it was Sean Ross Sapp reported that. And so now, we have some open-ended questions that with strong booking can make Dynasty a very interesting event, because now you're kicking off Dynasty, Double or Nothing, Forbidden Door, all
every month.
Like we're kicking it into high gear pretty soon here, right? So
this is going to be every 6 weeks or so.
This was a great opening pay-per-view for them, and hopefully kicks off some really strong programs so that we can be invested in what is to come. And I hope that we start on Wednesday, though not a ton announced yet so far. Changing gears really quickly. What did you think of Ospreay and Takeshita?
Remarkable. That was my favorite match, and there were so many to pick from. That match was so good. Just two of the best, really. Obviously we know that about Ospreay, but I think this was a great showing for Takeshita.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so I didn't like necessarily the pairing of the two guys because I knew Takeshita was going to have to lose this match. They weren't going to have Will lose in his debut. But the match was so high quality that didn't even matter at the end. Takeshita was seen in a new light, even though I think a lot of people really like him. I think he was seen in a different light after this match. And so in the end, I was wrong. It was actually really good booking, and it worked. Ospreay, here's an interesting one for me. So we saw Ospreay come in and just he was not going to be the talk of the town because we still had the Sting thing, but maybe secondarily so. People are mentioning Ospreay right after the Sting retirement. This is really Tony Khan's test, I think, which is you have the best wrestler, or arguably the best wrestler in all of wrestling right now. At his age, most definitely. Can you turn him into a bigger star? Can you enhance his stature in wrestling to turn him from the best wrestler into the biggest star? That has got to be like the biggest challenge, but also something that Tony is just like, yes, this is something that I've been, that I'm looking forward to doing, because man, Ospreay may not cut the promos that everybody else does. He's a little bit different there. He came out in the Kermit the Frog sweatsuit, which I wasn't that big of a fan of presentation-wise.
Well, did you hear his reason? He said that his luggage got lost.
Yeah, his luggage got lost. And so I'm assuming, even though they found it, maybe they didn't find it in time. But man, they where were they for that show? There's a mall around, maybe? Quickly
there's no tracksuit mall.
Quickly get my guy to a local Macy's. Do they still have Macy's? I don't know. Maybe
talking about a sweatsuit. I have the greatest Sergio Ticini black sweatsuit. It is unbelievable. I would have shared it with him. He could have borrowed it.
Yeah.
Nice Ticini. That's what he needs to start wearing. Forget about the Adidas. I'm going to teach him a little bit about sweatsuits here.
Yeah. The presentation, like that is going to be a part of it. Now, some AEW fans are going to say, "Oh,
so here's my question
for you. WWE, we need to be different." But I just think the guy is the goods. He's the goods.
You have a guy like Will Ospreay, right? And he's not the first. I mean, he is the greatest right now. But they've had this opportunity numerous times. Who have they had that you would consider a great wrestler that they have elevated into a higher level? One, I would think Eddie Kingston, right? Eddie would be one. Eddie was a great wrestler, very different style, but great wrestler, virtually unknown, and they've elevated him into somebody on TV, which is exactly what you want to do with your talent.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have someone like Jay White that came in as a former IWGP World Champion And he really hasn't done much after that.
Right.
I know that the plans changed. The Punk program got messed up. There was 2 titles, and I get it. But who else have they grabbed that wasn't, that is at that level and that they've elevated? I think this is a great test for them. I think
Yeah.
Swerve is one. You know,
Yeah.
is he a Will Ospreay level? I don't know. How do you judge that, right? It's very different styles. But Swerve came in there. An indie guy for sure. I mean, one of the best on the indies, and went to
Someone who
WWE.
WWE let go.
They let him go, and they let him go. I one day that I don't know if they've told the story about how he was let go, but it wasn't like on good terms. It wasn't done right. It was a very convoluted reasoning, but he leaves. And over time, he just develops into this character, and now he's, one of the top guys in that company. I hope they do that with Will. I hope they give him more depth in his character and who he is. They start telling us more about him. Because if I'm turning on AEW, why is he great? Right? Like, I'm just thinking as a casual. I know why he's great. But if I'm watching him and you're telling me he's one of the best free agents out there, tell me why. Show me. I mean, they did on the pay-per-view, but give me those packages. Build them up every week as this top-tier, only once-in-a-generation talent.
Yes.
Don't just have them go out there and cut a promo and then leave and say, I'm the best.
They had an opportunity with Kenny Omega, right? Kenny Omega was the most unique pro wrestling star that I had seen, maybe ever, for his New Japan run. He was unique. He was charismatic. Yep. He wasn't the same way that WWE stars are charismatic. And I thought there was a chance that he could have been like bigger than life just because of all of the great things that he does. And I'm not saying that his run was a disappointment in any way. He wanted to be a heel, and they did the Don Callis stuff, and it was a little goofy. Ultimately, he's a success story. He's great, but I always wonder if his run should have been more important or bigger than it was. Now there's pandemic stuff. There's lots of reasons for it. So to me, this is your second chance here with the guy who was sort of there to kind of replace Kenny Omega in New Japan. He did not make New Japan as big. Now, again, pandemic related, lots of different reasons. But again, a unique guy, a guy who uses bruv constantly. So how do you work with that? How do you accentuate the things that, like you said, that makes up Will Ospreay and take it to another level for him? That's what I'm going to be so interested in. I think he is ready to take it up another level. The wrestling is obviously there, and it's time to see, the bigger than life Will Ospreay that I think we all sort of feel is coming or is inside of him.
The Kenny thing you touched on, I think about regularly as far as, I think about what would have Kenny Omega in, committed full-time in the States look like if he was in WWE? And there was no AEW in 2019, and he went to WWE. I always saw it as a trajectory of AJ Styles, that initial, they elevated Styles for sure when he went there, and he wasn't a guy that was, planned for. I think it was more planning for Kenny if he were to go there. I'm curious how it would have looked and where we would be if that was the case. Would the injuries have played a part? Maybe. Would he have been just subjugated to wrestling Dolph Ziggler and The Miz every week? Maybe. Or would he have become, would he have been the wrestler's wrestler, and he would have had all these tremendous matches, and 4 years later, he would have, had his run? I don't know the answer, but I think for Kenny and AEW, there were so many variables. One, a lot of those guys didn't want to hold the titles, including the Bucks, including Cody, right? They didn't want to make it about themselves, and I think that was a detriment to that company. When you have, top tier talent like this, and they're just not sold on a world title run. Kenny finally got it. Like you said, he was a heel, so it didn't resonate as much. So there were numerous, and then the pandemic, obviously. So
Yeah.
very interesting. I think, is this a do-over for him? I don't know. Quite possibly.
Here's a question for you, because I don't think Kenny Omega would have been treated like an upper tier guy in WWE unless the AEW competition was there. Because what if you replaced Cody today in WWE with Kenny Omega? It's a different act completely. Like, they are
Very.
two completely different human beings, for one. You don't have the wrestling family stuff as much with Kenny, and it would be a different character. But if WWE was as sold on Kenny as they were on Cody, I do wonder if they could have then pushed him to the heights that Cody is at now. But again, like I say that by also saying I don't think WWE does that without the existence of AEW, and the existence of AEW kind of giving them a little run for their money by beating NXT, by improving their ratings. This is even pre-Punk, but they're kind of coming, and WWE's like, okay, well, we can get this guy. That's one of their lead dogs, and we know it will hurt them. If that was Cody, if that was Kenny instead, and they have to push him and such, it would be a different character altogether,
Yeah.
and unique. But I'd be interested to see what that character looked like.
Yeah, me too. I'd like to see what the Bucks would look like there too. And Hangman, what would that have been like?
It would have been crazy is what it would have looked like. They would have turned him into the new version of Magnum TA, because they would see his ability to grow that mustache.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some of the other matches real quick before talking WWE here. The triple threat for the world title. I hated the story going in. I still am kind of flustered by this idea that Hangman, ultimately wants to win the world title, but if he can't win it, then he makes sure that Samoa Joe is the one who keeps it, because he's screwing Swerve, or he's swerving Swerve. I wouldn't have done it that way, though. I wanted to see Swerve be the street smart guy who is not going to be fooled by normal heel tropes. And he was. And I was really disappointed, because I think when you do that to even a very cool babyface, it just hurts them for almost no reason whatsoever. Like, they could have told the same story without Hangman doing what he did. And I just thought it hurt Swerve. But at the same time, I do think Swerve needs to win this world title, even if it is to eventually lose it to Ospreay, because if you continue down this road where he's, second place, do you have faith in AEW that they will be able to heat him up to this level again this time next year? I'm not sure. I don't think so, actually.
I don't know. I'm not sure either. I think for Swerve, like if I'm gonna defend his him getting fooled by Hangman, I would say he's trying to become a better person, because he's now like a babyface. He's kind of a babyface, so he gave him the benefit of the doubt to that he is hurt. Maybe that's what it was, and he fell for it.
Who didn't fall for it, though, was Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe's like, I think he's lying. He's like, I think I'm still going to be facing two people at the pay-per-view. So if you're going to do what you did with Swerve, like you said, giving him the benefit of the doubt, then doesn't Joe also have to be slightly fooled? Because he absolutely wasn't, which I thought made Swerve look even more ridiculous as the babyface.
Yeah.
I would redo that one.
You got a lot of strong characters also in here, where they're all heels, essentially, right? Swerve is kind of the babiest of the baby faces, but he's still, last week he was wrestling a heel style, and Hangman was wrestling like a baby face. So it's a weird combination. I think Swerve is going to get that moment, obviously. They're building to this. You don't get a chance to create a star too often, and they have a great opportunity to create a star, so they have to do it at the perfect timing. It has to matter. Whether that's the pay-per-view, coming up in April, or Double or Nothing, or whatever, you do it at All In or All Out. It has to happen this year. I feel like it is. Um, but you also have to see what's that top looking like. You know, who's his opponent? Is it going to be Jay White? Is it going to be Will Ospreay? You know, you also have MJF coming back, right? That's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
This roster is going to be very different when everybody's healthy in a couple months.
I
Very
think
different.
Swerve should win the title. I would
Okay.
do it sooner than later because you want
When
him
would you
to.
do it?
I would do it at the next pay-per-view.
Okay.
But if you want to push it to Double or Nothing, like let's say you get Swerve and Hangman again at Dynasty, and the winner gets the next title shot, and you have Swerve beat Hangman there in a classic, I'd be okay with that. But Swerve cannot lose in his next championship match. He's got to win. So whether that's at Dynasty, whether that's at Double or Nothing, because I do think belting Will at All In is going to be fantastic, and I would look into having a great the best match possible. Right, that's not going to be with Wardlow. At this point, I think he'd have a tremendous match with Samoa Joe. But he may have a better match with Swerve. He'd probably have a better match with Hangman. So I would look at who you have who could probably give, the craziest best match with Will, and that's probably Swerve, at least to me. But then you may have two baby faces going up, so I don't know. There's not much of a grudge there, so maybe I don't know. But what I would do is I would put it on Swerve sooner than later, get him to All In, have Will win at All In, and then Swerve, even though it's a shorter title run, Swerve's made, right? He
Yeah.
becomes a guy who all of a sudden you don't need the belt to be a top guy now. He's just a top guy because he's a former champion.
But they
So
don't do short title runs in that company.
they have not. And I think they're going to either have to start in some instances, or they need to make one of those other titles like bigger than they are now, because
Yeah.
Christian's doing a great job, but I don't think we see Christian as like the top contender to the world title. Same
They
with
also haven't told us. They haven't told us which belt matters more.
Yeah.
They really haven't done that. Where in WWE, they make it very clear, right? Depending on the time. Like, is the US title when it is the prominent one, it is. When the IC title is the prominent one, it is. They also have two world titles that they don't have to really worry about because they could do this, well, you get a belt and you get a belt. AEW doesn't have that with the secondary world title. They did for a short period of time, and I'm sure that was in the mix here. Man, wasn't that end story always going to be a ladder match for the title between MJF and Punk? Wouldn't that have been? And neither one of them wanted to do business at that time. Yeah. I shouldn't say that. I didn't mean it like that. It wasn't in the cards. That's what I mean. Not that they said, absolutely not. I'm not going to work with this guy. It just wasn't in the cards at the time. And they didn't take the opportunity. I don't think people saw it going the way it did, and we're left here. And I'm not saying they need a secondary title, but they need to emphasize something. It is technically that crown, the Continental Championship, right? What Continental Crown, Continental Triple Crown. What are they calling it now? The Continental Crown,
whatever.
That should be one of them. That should be the second most important belt in that company.
Okay, but then that means the ROH world title is higher than your other belts, as well as the New Japan Strong title.
I guess if you have all three of them,
it's like individually they're just like meh, but you put them together and then they're like super powered. I could see that. Now, the problem is that I don't know. What is Tony Khan's partnership with New Japan like with that belt? And so in some instances,
I don't know.
Like let's say you have to lose that title to someone from New Japan because of whatever reason. Maybe you don't want the top guy to have it because then you're sort of at the mercy of being a partner. I don't know exactly how they're booking all of that stuff. So I'm just I might be speaking out of turn here, but Christian, now Roddy Strong has the other belt. I don't see those guys as top contenders for the world title, and that's probably a problem. Especially if you have, 7 or 8 contenders for the top belt, right? Like there's so many guys. Once Okada comes in and
That
MJF
changes a
comes
lot.
back and Adam Cole comes back from injury, like you're adding 3 more guys to the mix of main event stuff. And
Let's add Kenny too. Let's add Kenny also.
that Kenny when he comes back,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys in the top mix, and I hope that they could actually do that with the women's side too, bringing in Mercedes, um, whatever they're going to do here with Tony Storm's character. I would love to see that type of competition for top spots with the women's title, because then, you're seeing more of these matches on television. Like we only had 2 on the pay-per-view, and I'm not sure what else you could have added unless, one of them was on the 0 hour. So I want to see more of a mix in that on that women's side too. Hopefully they can build up some of the folks there. Getting Statlander back up, and I guess Serena Deeb may be Mercedes' first opponent. Hopefully Britt comes back, but the one is Jamie Hayter. Hopefully she is going to be able to come back, because I think she's got the opportunity to be like the top star for the women in AEW. Okay, let's talk a little bit about WWE in these last 15 minutes here. Rock and Roman did a 40-minute segment on SmackDown, which I'm sure you've already talked about on some of your other shows. That segment, I thought it was really long and it was a little boring. It was kind of fun. But the promo that Rock did on Twitter was awesome.
Oh my God.
In comparison to that. So much so that Seth and Cody were kind of answering stuff off of the Twitter promo in their retort on Monday Night Raw. Like I saw them referencing some stuff that Rock said on Twitter and not on the main SmackDown promo. But where are you now with this story? Because I think when they did the press conference a few weeks ago, we were kind of like, this seems like it's like hot shotted and things are kind of moving in weird directions. The Rock explained it very well in the Twitter promo. He kind of created the story, and now they have this match for WrestleMania Night 1. The tag match is either going to be a winner. If Rock and Roman win, then Roman's main event on Night 2 is a Blood Rules or Anything Goes, or I forgot what he called it, Bloodline something match. Or if Cody and Seth win, the Bloodline is not able to be at ringside. I think that's a really fun stipulation. Have things started to make more sense for you as this storyline has gone on?
It was convoluted, then it was making a whole lot of sense, and then now it's back to being convoluted with the stipulations. If you beat me, then I won't go down to the ring. But if I beat, it's very pro wrestling. But why did Cody give up his spot? That's what I don't understand. I mean, in reality, he gave up his spot because he wasn't in the mix anymore, and they did a 180. But what was the thinking behind that? It really took me out of it. So this guy talking about a story, and all of a sudden Dwayne shows up. He goes, listen, it's not my time. It's his time. When I asked, I was told it'll all make sense.
Well, okay, so this is where Rock's promo on Twitter comes into play, because the way that he explained it is that on January 1st, he had the plan of they wanted to see if the fans wanted to see Rock and Roman as the biggest WrestleMania match of all time. And when he saw that in front of the crowd and he said, do you want to see me at the head of the table? And the crowd went crazy. That was the sign of like, okay, this is going to be the match. And then he said, and then Cody went out and won the Royal Rumble. And he's like, I was so proud of him, like back to back. What a great job. He was fantastic that night. But he said that they had a discussion, and the agreement was that Cody would go for the other belt and that Rock would have the Roman match because they both understand the business. They're both raised in the business. They both grew up in the business. So they understand how big this Rock versus Roman Reigns match is supposed to be. So Cody agrees to step aside. And when they did the thing on SmackDown, when Cody came out and The Rock whispered in his ear, The Rock said, he told him, think about the Soul Man, think about Dusty, and, just about this is the right thing for business. And so when they went to the press conference, and then they kind of did the thing where Roman was going to announce who he wanted, and he announced Rock, and then they both kind of made fun of maybe Cody a little bit, which got him upset. Then he made the line about the bloodline and the families and such, and then Cody changed his mind. And that's the thing that he said last night too. He's like, I changed my mind. So he, in storyline, is accepting that there was a previous deal, but because he did not like the optics of what was going on, he changed his mind and he took what was rightfully his. So that is the storyline that they are telling. Now, we know behind the scenes it was much different about how they were doing this. So as a storyline, it's not bulletproof. It has holes. But I think all four of these guys actually are good enough storytellers to where, we'll sort of forgive some of the holes. You know what the problem is going to be, though? The night one match. What if the night one match sucks? I think that's the problem in this whole thing.
What if it's like unbelievable?
If it's unbelievable, then night two is going to be made.
I mean, I don't know. I'm very curious about this because I always feel like that initial reaction, the pop matters, right? So if Cody loses, right? Let's say Cody and Seth lose, and I imagine they will because it'll be a schmaz in that main event. Does it heighten night two or does it hurt night two? And the opposite, if Cody wins and they're barred from ringside, does it help or does it hurt? I don't know. I can't. It really is going to depend on the energy of that stadium, depending on what time the show goes on. That's going to play a big part. It's how does that audience feel? Because I got to tell you, remember that Ronda match, the main event, wasn't terrible. No, was it New York? The three-way, right?
Yeah, it was in New York.
It was. My God, it was in New York. That feels like it was an eternity ago. That audience was so tired, where nothing mattered after that.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen, especially with a main event, especially if you've seen it twice. So I don't know. I think a lot of this is going to have to do with the happenstance around the match. I'm very much against it. I don't like the 2-night thing. I don't like the 2-night thing to begin with. I understand why they do it, and I don't like seeing it be, two different matches from night one to night two. I would have even gotten behind, you got to beat somebody to get me at night two, I would have even bought that, and you could have had a big time main event also on that night too.
Well, the heel way to do it, if you don't have Rock, the heel way to do it is Roman dangles the other belt over Cody and Seth's head and goes, "You guys got to fight to get a shot at me." That would have been the heel way to do it without the Rock. Okay, so here's the thing though that I'm also intrigued in. The Rock has turned heel, even though when he comes out on SmackDown, the fans, the live crowd, is playing along, but they do treat him like a different level than they treat everybody else. There's like an awe that the crowd has when he comes in. And of course, he's a giant movie star at the same time. But he talked about he likes to tell these longer stories. So if we are to believe what is happening here, they're going to do this year's Mania. And maybe next year's Mania is for the babyface turn and for the true head of the table. That allows the bloodline to stick around and be hot for another year, which was probably the worry last year and why Cody lost last year is because you wanted the bloodline to stay hot, and the bloodline has stayed hot. It's carried business really, and so now you're keeping it around for yet another year in hopes that Rock's star power and Roman's character change, because he got The Rock to acknowledge him as the tribal chief, and so his character is just kind of in a different level of, being into himself and sort of being power
Yeah.
hungry. And so I'm just wondering, can that last a full calendar year for us to get to WrestleMania 41, and they finally have that match, and then The Rock's sort of 2-year revolution there is done, and we finally see the end of all of that. That is a lofty goal, and
That is a
imagine
lot.
if they can keep the business how it is right now. What a and look, it's all. And I say this because in Dwayne's promo, who does he mention? He mentions Bella Bajari, who runs the programming at Netflix, right?
Yeah.
In January, they're going to be on Netflix heading into WrestleMania 41.
Yeah. And
So
I'm willing
that
to
is
bet he's going to be on. Yeah. He's going to be all over that show.
he's got to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He has to.
So,
He has to be.
and he mentioned another thing that I thought was interesting. He said he's in the biggest movie on Netflix. I wonder if that's true. And
What
what
is the
does
biggest
big
movie on
mean?
Netflix?
I'm guessing he's saying the Red Notice movie, right?
Was that the biggest movie ever on Netflix?
One of their own movies that they distributed through the platform. I'm guessing that's the one that he's talking about. And so if Netflix believes in him as far as eyeballs, like that is a giant reason. It's kind of like it kicks off Raw on Netflix, and he's going to be, I would imagine he's on the first show. I mean, you have an all hands on deck
Yeah.
probably for the first
Yeah.
show. It's going to be like one of those special reunion shows or whatever, those special anniversary shows that they do where they just can bring back everybody. But that is the fascinating piece of this to me. Now, I'm always, I can't, part of my problem with being a wrestling fan is I cannot just enjoy the moment. Like we just had this great moment with Sting, and I'm already talking
Yeah.
about
You're
WrestleMania
thinking, what's
41.
next?
That's just the way that I think about this stuff and how it keeps me engaged. But man, that is a mighty challenge, and it seems like he's got his teeth sunk into this whole thing. So I'm intrigued at where they're going to go and all the things that they're building up to right now.
Me too. I'm very excited for it. I want to see where both companies go. This is a really hot period for everybody. So, uh, I whatever WWE does, it's gonna be fine. Their audience is gonna love it. Cody will have his moment. It'll be fine. But I kind of want to see things a different way, and I don't like the mess ups here. There's been a couple bumps in the road, and I don't like that. It's unnecessary for the story.
What do you think? Now, this is something that you and I haven't talked about, and we'll talk sort of wrestling business here for the last 5 minutes. So Raw is done in September, right? They are off the USA channel in September. SmackDown comes to USA right at that time. Like, so for USA, they're not going to miss a step. They're going to have Raw one week and then all of a sudden SmackDown the next week. At least I think that's how it's going to work. I'm not 100% sure. But there's this pocket of time where Raw doesn't have a home.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Netflix if Netflix wanted them in September, they would have just taken them in September. There's a specific reason they said January, I'm assuming. So where does Raw go for those last few months?
I don't know. But here's the problem, right? Do you expose yourself? Unnecessarily? Do you go on Peacock and devalue this move that you're doing, or do you extend on USA? I don't know. I think the best thing would be USA extends this and keeps them going, because why do you want to take
USA
away
has
the
both
viewership?
shows, right? So then the USA has both shows for the time
USA
being.
has both shows. if I'm WWE, I'm going to take less money to stay put and not shake this up, because the move to digital, move to non-linear is going to play a huge part in their story for the next X amount of months,
Mhm.
right? It already, people are anticipating hiccups as far as viewership go. I've seen the arguments that the viewership is going to be lower. I've seen the argument that accessibility to an older demo is going to get harder, which is absolutely true. I think those 55 pluses are going to start plummeting off that cliff. However, what do you do if you have no home? And they don't
Yes.
right now. I can't imagine that this was a mess up on the WWE side. These are the best of the best within
Mhm.
TV and contracts. How do you say, well, we'll figure it out?
Okay, here's an idea. Now, let me know what you think about this. Sometimes they do Raw versus SmackDown, so that could be a creative thing, and because the you don't actually lose connectivity of Raw because you're still seeing the Raw stars. But here's also the interesting thing: does Peacock and NBC pump the move to Netflix? Like, how can they market that thing when they're competitors with Netflix?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm very confused by the whole thing, to be honest. I don't think it's. I'm just going in with the mentality that they know something we don't, and they're
Yeah.
just not ready to make that announcement. And it's going to make sense because you don't mess with your TV, you don't mess with ad revenue, you don't change the perception of what you are. Uh, this is a company that has continuously been on the air since 1993, every single week with no hiccups.
Yep.
And how does this look
They've
for
never
your
gone dark.
investors? Also, they've never gone dark except for when Vince is gone. How does this look for your investors? They were very big on what do the investors think about Steph. Remember that?
Yes.
I don't know. I think there's something here. It's very strange that they did it the way they did it, but I'm gonna go with the confidence that they know what they're doing.
By the way, do you think TKO wants Vince to sell all of his stock?
I would. I think TKO wants him to disappear as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Man, he sold some stocks, huh?
Yeah.
Almost $400 million worth.
Yep.
He still has
It's
about
funny
five and a
because
half percent.
so Dave was talking about this on Wrestling Observer Radio. He's like, well, either he wants to, if you believe the company is growing, then you kind of want to hang on to the stock, and especially if you're going to leave it for your family. But if you don't think they're going to be growing, then maybe you sell them and you just get the money. I think there may be a little bit of like pressure from those guys, be like, dude, little by little, let's just try and get rid of all of it because we don't want you attached anymore. And to
Listen,
Vince, I
he
mean,
got his cash out.
he could cash it out and then he could just reinvest it, right? He's not just going to put it in a bank account. He's going to reinvest a lot of that money, and he
I,
can leave that for his family if that's what he wants to do.
I had a dream where I was having total night terrors where he started his own promotion at like the age of like 85.
Oh God.
He starts another one after his NDAs and everything have cleared, and with the company, not what he did. Um, did you ever see that happening?
No, I don't.
You don't.
I,
You
I
don't.
think it's too much work. As much as we want to think like he's a crazy workaholic, like I can't imagine he had those same legs in the last 10 years that he had previously.
Probably not.
Like look
Probably
at the
not.
XFL. Look at how quickly he gave up on it. He was just like, not even worth it. Under
Twice.
Alpha Entertainment. Remember, he still got that entertainment group, Alpha
Alpha.
Entertainment.
Oh. All Alpha Wrestling, AAW. It just jacked up dudes. Everybody's just jacked to the gills.
Maybe just brings back Titan Sports.
He could bring back Titan Sports. He could have, his vision of the Roman gladiators. He could do that whole thing again.
Well, you saw that gosh, what there was some crazy person was going to do an Olympics or something where it was going to be non-drug tested or like actually you're going to encourage people to get on crazy amount of drugs. I forgot there's some conservative dude who was like trying to get that thing going.
What?
You didn't see that?
No, what
It,
is
it
this?
was like it was like a non-drug tested competition just to see like, if people could
How
just break these
wh-
crazy records or whatever.
how big and strong you could get? I mean,
Yeah.
listen, everybody's on something. I know too much about this stuff. Everybody's on something. Nobody is squeaky clean and looks like that. Okay? I don't care. I don't care how many times you tell me you are eating clean and you diet and you have 80,000 grams of protein a day. It is impossible to maintain that body without some sort of assistance.
Okay, you know who's going to tell you that it is
Oh,
possible? You're going to get a
Dave?
DM from
Dave?
two people. You're going to get a DM. One is Dave,
Uh-huh.
and someone's going to text you in a very stern manner.
Well, I've had that conversation with Lance many
Yeah,
times in the past, and you know, Lance is an anomaly. I
he
don't
is.
think everybody in the wrestling business is an anomaly.
No.
Those guys are. I believe Lance when he tells me he's
Oh yeah.
never did that stuff. There's no denying it because he's so disciplined as a human being. These guys are not all disciplined like that.
The only thing I've ever seen
They.
Dave take.
Oh, what? Ooh, scandalous. Like what? What is he taking?
I've seen him take creatine. That's it.
I. You know. There needs to be an expose on this now. How is he consuming this creatine? How is he ingesting the creatine?
Like I still use the powder, the creatine powder, but I think he may have
Yeah.
had like some capsules or something. But yeah, that's the only thing I've ever seen him take is creatine. And
The only thing that I take is TRT. And I mean like
what
my
a
concoction of vitamins every day,
Yeah, yeah. What a way to end. I love it. I love it when we end with the TRT. All right. So, like I mentioned, in the near future, we're going to work on getting Big Dave on here to do Q&A. It may not
Yes.
be on a Tuesday because I know Tuesday's kind of what he considers his off day. So it may be another day if we can work it out with our schedules as well. But that is going to be the next Q&A. And you know who we also need to bring back here is we haven't
Who?
talked to Denise in a long time. We need to get
We
Denise
have
back on
not
the
spoken to
show.
Denise. We
She's
have
doing
not
big
been
things,
speaking.
man. She's
She's on
got all
Busted
these
Open Radio.
shows. Yeah, she got renewed for Bustin' Open Radio. Like she's doing big things, and I am so happy whenever I see something
Me
new that
too.
she's doing because this is her lifestyle. This is her gig, and she's so into the gig, and she hustles so hard. I just love seeing any good news from her about another gig that she gets because just so happy and proud for her. So
Yeah, me too.
hopefully we'll bring her back and do something similar with the Q&A thing down the line. All right, so for Andrew, I am a Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.